Greetings. I'm Dr. Irvin Brown, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to share with those who are listening and viewing a few words about my recently published eBook entitled The Malcolm X Story Retold, subtitled In Search of the Blessed Community. The Malcolm X story retold because it's a story that's been told many times before and no doubt will be told many more times in the future. The particular take, or what's unique about this book, is that it provides a spiritual perspective on Malcolm X's life. It's also written in poetic verse, but the important point is that it's a spiritual perspective that complements, doesn't in any wise replace previous works, but it complements 50 years of writings on Malcolm's political evolution and his religious transformations and his many transformations in general. That's one of the common themes in Malcolm's life. Everyone would agree. One most recent biographer called it life of reinvention. But in any event, the spiritual take is one in which I identify three prefigurations of the blessed community, hence the subtitle, In Search of the Blessed Community. The idea is that all of us, deep down inside, if not knowingly, not wittingly, all of us are upon a search for a place to call home, a place where we fit in, a place inhabited by kindred spirits, by people who know their worth. No war, no envy, no jealousy, and the list goes on. You're familiar with the concept, no doubt. But it was the enormity of Malcolm's life and his tragic death by assassination that makes his story so compelling. Even though his story is a universal story, it's also, and especially, a particularly profound story. So I identified three prefigurations or previews of the blessed community in Malcolm's life. The first one is the street life in Boston and New York, which he discovered after he was rescued from Lansing, Michigan, when his mother had been placed in a home for the insane, after having to take care of the children in the absence of her husband, who was murdered by friends of the Klan, no doubt. And also, a part of his very difficult situation was his schooling. He was in an essentially all-white school. And once he was taken to Boston and surrounded by so many of what he called his own kind, life was making an enormous turn for the better. But that blessed community wasn't just a general black community, it was a gangster life, it was a street life. He was really taken by hipsters and crooks, cool cats as they were called back then. And he emulated them. He wanted to be, Malcolm always loved attention, even as a small child, and that never changed. What changed and what transformed was the kind of attention he loved. Later, he would love having people be attentive to his thoughts and his ideas. But in any event, the first blessed community was quite different from that. Hustlers, burglary. In fact, burglary is what got him in prison. And that spelled the end of that would-be blessed community, his imprisonment. Certainly prison wasn't the second blessed community. It was not so much blessed, even though Malcolm did say that he thinks no one, he doesn't think anyone, I should say, got more out of being in prison than he did. And we know the familiar story of how his mind was awakened, how he began to educate himself in prison. But in prison, he was also exposed to the Nation of Islam through his brother's visits. His brother Reginald. Now, this was the second blessed community, or at least the second prefiguration of the blessed community. Malcolm was just so grateful that Allah had saved him from a life of crime and sin. When he was released, he worked very hard, fervently, I should say, to move up in the ranks, the Nation of Islam, and of course became the national spokesman within a few years. Now, as the story goes, he was betrayed. That then became a would-be blessed community, and that opened the door, or led the way to finding the third prefiguration of the blessed community, which was Orthodox Islam, what he would call the true Islam. He was amazed that in his trip to Mecca, he was able to worship and share brotherhood with men of all races and backgrounds. That was the blessed community. Now, I'm fudging a bit because a part of that opening, that expansion, that moving to a more universal perspective, though never losing sight of its primary commitment to black liberation, a part of that blessed community was identifying with the African Revolution. So you may want to think that through a bit further. In any event, some might say that had Malcolm lived longer, he may have become disappointed even in his third blessed community, because we all know the African revolutions suffered a terrible fall, and we all know that Saudi Arabia isn't quite the paradise that Malcolm seemed to think it was from his brief tours there. So, as I said before, the book is rendered in poetic verse. The story begins with, this is a story of making the best out of the worst. The life of a hero enshrined in poetic verse. I'll mention toward the end of it a few more lines, then I'll close up. These lines sort of get to the point of how enormous I see Malcolm's life and the significance of his life as being. Malcolm X lived a life of mythological proportions that will always elude men's intellectual and political notions. He was born the same year that Marcus Garvey was taken to jail on the trumped-up charge of defraud by mail. Patrice Lumumba was also born that year. This must have put Satan's forces in great fear. Handwriting was appearing on the wall. Babylon, soon after fall. Thank you. Look into the book. There should be a link on Facebook. It can also be purchased directly. Can be purchased rather at Smashwords, Amazon, or Barnes and Nobles, and also be alert to eventual publication of a recital of the poem, and in which I'm accompanied by two very fine players of instruments. Thank you.